everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. Today I'm using a sketch from Christy's Beautiful Life, 30 Days of Sketches. This is day 10's sketch, and I really like the circles on this layout. So I'm going to use my Cricut to cut these out, and I'll show you how I cut them to match the shapes shown in the sketch. I'm going to be using some pattern papers and die cuts from my SCT Sampler. I just received my February kit, so I want to use it up. I'm also going to be adding some stamped images from this beautiful poppy stamp set to my layout. But before I start assembling the page, I want to show you how I cut out those circles using the Cricut. I'm going to show you a really simple way to cut out the circle shapes that you need using the slice tool. I'm going to start by inserting a square shape the same size as my background paper. Now I'm going to go over two shapes here on the left, and I'm going to insert a circle shape. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this 2 more times so that I have 3 circles to match the circles on the sketch. Now I'm just going to resize the circles to match the sketch, and I've inserted a 4x6 rectangle to help me visualize where my photo is going to go on this layout. All right, now that I have placed the circles in the exact spot where I plan to place them on the layout, I'm going to use the slice tool to create the circle shapes that I need. Now at this point, I could just cut out my circles, but I like to save as much paper as possible when I'm creating a scrapbook page. So I'm going to show you how I use the slice tool to save paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is delete that photo template that I placed down. I don't need it anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. Now I'm going to slice each one of these shapes individually. When you're using the slice tool in Cricut Design Space, you can only slice 2 shapes or images at a time. So I'm going to hold down my mouse key and I'm going to drag across the first circle and the square shape, and I'm going to see that both of them are selected over here on the right in the layers panel because they've turned a darker shade of gray. Now I'm going to go to the lower right and select Slice. You can see that both of those images moved to the front, and I have sliced images over here in the Layers panel. I'm going to go ahead and click on that square shape and choose Arrange, then Send to Back. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process with the second circle. I've selected the square shape and the circle shape, and I'm going to choose Slice. Again, I'm going to select that square shape, send it to the back, and repeat the process with the third circle. Now that I've sliced all 3 circle images, I'm going to go ahead and pull them apart and show you all the pieces we have left. So we've cut all of the shapes out of that 11.5-inch square. We don't need that anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I am going to need this circular shape for the top of my layout, so I can go ahead and get rid of these other sliced shapes. I'm also going to need this partial circular shape for the right side of my layout, and I can go ahead and delete what's left of this circle. And then I'm going to need the top of this circular shape for the bottom of my layout. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the rest of the sliced shapes. Now I have all 3 circular shapes that I'm going to need for my scrapbook page. At this point, I can go ahead and change the material colors to match the papers that I plan on cutting these circular shapes out of. Or I could cut them all out of one piece of paper. All right, let's go ahead and start assembling the layout, and let me show you how I use these circles. I have cut out my pattern paper circles, which are going to be placed in the same general area as the sketch. I did not cut a photo in a circular shape. Instead, I will have a 4x6 photo on the left side of the page. Before I adhere them in place, I'm going to add some color and texture to that white background. Now, I'm just starting to learn how to use mixed media, so I'm going to keep it simple today. I'm going to start with a swish of light blue watercolor paint. This blue matches the blue in some of the patterned paper. I'm brushing it onto some mixed media paper. This paper doesn't peel or warp too much with the mediums I'm going to be adding. I'm using very little water and a light touch so that I get more of a dry brush look, which is a texture I really like. I'm also going to add a little bit of splatter to the page with a green-blue paint. Once the paint has dried, I'm going to apply some glitter texture paste with a stencil. This is a simple floral pattern that I want to add to the page to match the other floral elements I'm going to add. I'm going to be using a silicone brush to apply the texture paste because it's really thick, and this is one of the easiest ways to apply it. I'm just going to simply brush a layer of this glitter texture paste across the stencil until I get a nice even coat. Now I'm going to lift away the stencil and set this page aside to dry. I'm going to go off camera and immediately wash my stencil and my silicone brush so that that texture paste doesn't dry on them, and then I'll come back and continue to work on the layout. Before I adhere this to the background page, I'm going to add some speckled egg blue ink around the edges to soften them up a bit. This is going to bring in some more blue to the layout, and it's going to match that watercolor background I created. Along the top and bottom of this layout, I'm going to adhere a strip of black and white plaid paper. Then I'll adhere this white background to a piece of blue pattern paper to create a nice frame around the layout. Now I can start laying out the main elements for my page. I have those circles we created in Design Space, cut from the 6x6 pattern papers from my kit. The photo is backed in a blue-green floral and some typeset paper. I'm going to go ahead and apply a little bit of black soot ink to the edges of these before I adhere them in place. I'm going to place a little bit of adhesive in the centers of the circles just so that they stay in place, but I'm not going to stick them down completely because I plan on tucking some flowers behind them. I have started to layer all the pattern papers that are sitting behind my photo, and something is feeling a little bit off. I kept playing around with the layers, and I've realized that it's that green floral paper. Most of the colors I've chosen are a teal color, and this kind of has more green than blue to it. It has kind of a seafoam green feel, and it's not quite fitting in with the other colors I've added to my page. So I'm going to go ahead and switch it out and change it to another pattern paper that matches the frame around the page. And now your eyes are going to be drawn more to the photo. I love how that floral layer in the back is pulling all the colors of the circles together. Now I'm going to bring in a stamping platform and stamp some of those poppies with some black pigment ink. I'm going to be heat embossing these, so I'm brushing the paper with an anti-static pouch to prevent any embossing powder from sticking where I don't want it to. I'm going to stamp a few sets of these onto some watercolor paper. Then I'll sprinkle them with embossing powder and heat set the images. I'm going to be filling these in with some watercolor paint. So I want the heat embossing to create a nice deep raised image on each of the flowers. I also like the texture that embossing powder provides. The little details on these flowers are going to add a nice contrast to the page. Alright, I'm going to go off camera and cut out each one of these little flowers. Then I'll show you how I'm going to add them to my layout. So I've gone ahead and cut all the images out. I didn't purchase the dies for this set, so I had to fussy cut each one of those flowers and leaves. They were not too difficult, but if you're not a fan of fussy cutting, you may want to order the matching dies that go with these stamps. I've placed flowers on either side of the photo to create kind of a frame and draw your eyes to the picture. In the sketch, the circle on the right has a horizontal line, and I like how that creates flow across the page. I'm going to replicate that with my flowers and a sentiment. This is a sentiment that came with my kit, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it down. So I have the phrase lots of love, and then I'll place this flag over the peach circle. So now that I've added a little bit of teal over here on this peach circle, I want to create a visual triangle on my page with that teal color. I'm going to place 2 more blue sentiments on the page, and then I'll add a few more flowers. This little pink cluster of flowers came with the kit, and it's the only one I have, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it at the moment here at the top of the page as an extension of the floral circle. In the sketch, the larger circle at the top is a photo. Now, I debated putting a title up here, but I feel like a title here would be a bit too busy. I like how those flowers next to the photo and the sentiment created a horizontal line on my page. So I'm going to build onto that to create my title. I'm going to use some foam dots to adhere these flowers in place off camera. Then I'll come back and show you how I add some color to the larger flowers. I have mixed a few of the watercolor paints to create a color that matches that peach colored circle. I want to bring more of that color to the page, so I'm going to paint some of the larger flowers that soft peachy tone. I'm going to apply a soft wash of color to each flower and just allow that color to flow into each of the petals so that they have a more organic look. Like I said earlier, these were stamped onto watercolor paper because I knew that I would be adding paint to them. I've decided to keep the leaves white so that I don't add too many more colors to the page. If you would like to create a more colorful page with vibrant greens, you can add paint to the leaves. I would suggest that you try to use a color that matches the other greens in the pattern papers, or paint them in a teal color to match other elements on the layout. In the centers of the flowers, I'm going to add another layer of color to create some darker tones. I'm not adding this to every petal, and I'm allowing that darker color to flow towards the center of each flower and just letting those watercolors do what they like to do. I really like this contrast of peach and navy blue, and I like how these flowers are helping to bring that peachy color to the rest of the layout. I'm going to go ahead and allow these to dry, then I'll finish adding the rest of the elements to the page. Off camera, I added some peach colored stitching to each of the circles and some white stitching to the left of the photo. I adhered the photo in place with some foam tape so that those flowers could peek out from underneath. I love the contrast of the delicate watercolor flowers with the bright, chunky fonts and flowers on this layout. It really speaks to the 2 personalities in the photo. Can you guess which personality is which? Near the title, I decided to add a blue heart because I wanted to bring some of that navy blue to this part of the page. I'm just going to finish off the layout with a few white acrylic hearts. These add just a little bit more dimension and texture to the white space of the page. I'm going to go ahead and type up my journaling, and then I'll show you this finished layout. Here is the layout next to the sketch. I did keep the circular shapes on the sketch, but instead of creating a circular photo, I added my own pattern papers and other items to fit the 4x6 photo that I wanted to use. I printed out the journaling on some vellum and adhered it to the lower left, then added an arrow to help ground it and create a nice little accent on that side of the layout. I also added an ampersand in the title and an acrylic heart near the top of the page. I'm going to show you some close-up photos of this layout so that you can see it in a little bit more detail. I want to thank you for joining me today for day 10 of Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketch Challenge. I hope that you enjoyed the techniques I shared and learned a new way to use your Cricut. Mixed media is always something I've been afraid to try because of its unpredictability, but I truly enjoyed using some of the skills that I have been learning, and I enjoyed being able to try something new. If you're unsure about mixed media, go ahead and give it a try. Start small, like I did on this layout, and you will love the results. If you have any questions or suggestions or would like to know more about the supplies I used, feel free to post your comments below. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.